Welcome into Can We Just Talk? My name is Troy DiSavino. Today on the show, we've got Richie Welbrock, Chris Sakonis, and Jacob Berg. Again, Can We Just Talk? This is the show where it doesn't matter if you live under a rock, because if you do, that's all right. We'll fill you in on what you missed from this past week's biggest events, stories, and developments in a nice casual conversation. On the agenda for today, we've got a historic year for the doubters of Elon Musk and Tesla. There's a lot of money missing over in the UK. Again, even if it is in the currency form, I still think it's too much missing. Toronto bar saved as the patrons buy 90 cases worth of beer. And what's the deal with all this airplane food? And why does Chris Sakonis think airplanes are that so cool? We'll get into that again on the episode. Again, this is Can We Just Talk? Let's get rolling. I thought this was a funny headline. This one's coming from CNN Business. The title of this article is Elon Musk will love this. Tesla short sellers lost more than U.S. airline industries this year. If you bet against Elon Musk, you are the big loser of 2020 because I'm sure if you guys have kept up with it, Tesla is just shooting to the moon. I mean, they have since early 2020. And there's kind of been the idea that eventually they were just going to fall back. And it really hasn't happened yet. It's been the stock of the year, except for, some of the ones in the pharmaceutical industry, but Teslas just keep going up. I don't know the exact number they started at this year, but it's tripled, it's doubled. Like it's been nothing. Like you wouldn't even know there's a global pandemic going on and Tesla's going through the roof. So, that's the big story. Chris and Jacob, I'm joined by you guys today. Richie also here alongside me. I'd love to kind of get your guys' thoughts on, Tesla in 2020 and Elon Musk as a whole.
I mean, I've always been a big fan of what Elon Musk has done with Tesla. I think that, obviously it's important that we get like electric cars more popular because fossil fuels are literally destroying the planet. And also like if you've seen the cars that Tesla makes, like they're pretty cool. So, I'm not surprised to see that the company is doing really well. I think it would be really stupid to have bet against them, seeing like the trends of where the car industry is headed. You would think that investing in Tesla is a no-brainer.
For comparison to see where they started, by the way, I just want to get this figure. They started the year, there's been some adjustments to how their stock has been laid out this year. I think it got cut. So it started the year at an approximate evaluation of around like $88 a share. Now it sits at $600 a share as we record this. Jacob, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris. I'm gonna have to take the counter opinion to you a little bit. I thought the article was interesting. I mean, definitely some big losses, but I thought, the timing is also very convenient. In the past month, Tesla stock goes from about $400 a share to, about $600 at the current moment. Part of that due to them being added to the S&P 500. Of course, the index stocks will have to keep up with that, and that definitely builds some sentiment for them. But, it is still an unrealized loss for many of the people holding short positions. And I don't know. Me personally, I'd say I'm a little bit out on Elon Musk. I love... What I do like to see is that people seem to be believing in the future of electric vehicles. But the reason why I'm a little bit out on Elon Musk is because I hope he doesn't ruin the future of electric vehicles just for a viral tweet. I think that, I agree. I understand where a lot of people are coming from with some of these short positions because, it's absolutely astronomical when you think of Tesla's value as compared to their actual sales. And so it's really interesting to see that the market is putting this much faith into a company that's value proposition extends way out into the future. So it is a big bet for many investors and a bet that I like to see because I am a fan of electric vehicles.
And
yeah, I just want to clarify, like, I'm not conflating Tesla, the company, which, makes really cool cars and is trying to become more mainstream, with Elon Musk, the really weird Twitter dude. I get your concern that, you know, he might ruin the company, but ultimately I think that the electric car market long term is the market looks too good long term for him to really meaningfully screw it up unless he does something, you know, totally beyond the pale.
So just for some context, like for the general idea of what shorting does, just if, you know, we have people listening in our audience that might not be familiar. I mean, the general idea of shorting is kind of like betting against the stock. Like you think you're going to be able to get a better value at a later time. And you're almost betting against Tesla at this point. You're betting that it will go down. And at this point, for some context for how this has worked out for people, I said it on the intro. People who have done this have lost more than the U.S. airline industry as a total this year. So in total, there's been billions of dollars lost by people who have decided, I want to bet against Elon Musk. And I can kind of put it into a little bit of context there. It's been about $35 billion lost in total of the shorting against Tesla and Elon Musk. And in the U.S. airline, there's been a total loss of about $26 billion. In November alone, Tesla shorters lost around $8.5 billion. So if you need a lesson to take away from this, right now isn't the best time to bet against Tesla unless you really think it's all going to come to a crashing halt soon. But this 2020 has not been nice to people who've decided they want to go against Elon Musk. And this has nothing to do with whether or not, you know, you like him as a guy. He's a little awkward sometimes. There's no debating that. You know, he's popular on Twitter. You see some really funny scenes of when he tests out his new Tesla truck and he smashes the window. It's provided some really funny moments at times. But from a guy who's running a business right now, they are making a lot of money. Well, not exactly. I know Tesla they didn't turn a profit for a long time, but
they did this year, I believe.
If you're a stockholder and you own, you know, if you own part of that company, you're making a lot of money. The product itself hasn't been the most profitable since launch. And I think they only turned a profit for the first time very recently, but still, it's been quite the year for Tesla.
I would just like to add, not so much on the financial situation that Tesla is going through, just, I guess, a little tidbit about Elon Musk. I mean, he had on his website shorts that had the models of his cars that spells out sexy on the butt of these shorts, and he sold them for $69.42, but on the website it said $69.420. So just to put that, I mean, that's just hilarious. You don't see people.
Was that on your wish list this year, Richie?
What'd you say?
He already bought them.
Yeah, I already have a couple pairs. I'm waiting for that to go up, actually.
I mean, Elon Musk is the guy who has put Easter eggs into his car, like, just for fun. I mean, the guy is named driving modes after scenes from Spaceballs. Like,
yes.
This is the guy who's not afraid to do that. And it's kind of funny to see how well Tesla has done on the stock market when a guy like that is running the company and is not afraid to, like, make jokes like this. You know, he's not the traditional CEO or, you know, head of a company. I know there's been a little discrepancy about that kind of in the past. We don't need to get into all that, when Elon Musk got into a little trouble. But it's just been it's just hard to believe you betting against Elon Musk it's cost $35 billion in losses this year. You think about how much, you know, the U.S. airline industry is hurting. Like, imagine hurting more than that, and that's what you get if you're going against Elon Musk. And it's just incredible. Go ahead, Jacob.
I was just gonna add, that definitely is crazy. And I think if you wanna, you know, also hear a crazy stat, they mentioned that, you know, it's more valuable than the next 6 automakers combined, and that's Toyota, Volkswagen, Daimler, GM, BMW, Honda. All of those combined doesn't have the same market cap as Tesla. And I mean, I can see the pessimism, just because I feel like there are so many other players who can also enter the electric vehicle market that have, you know, longer standing reputation, and like more established distribution, more established manufacturing. So that's part of the reason why I also might be a little bit down on Tesla, even though I can definitely see that this year they've killed it in the stock market.
I mean, them as a company as a whole is just kind of crazy just to think about the stuff they're doing. I remember when Tesla launched, and even where they are now with their fully autonomous driving, they just seem like leaps and bounds ahead of the most successful car companies out there, like Mercedes and BMW and Audi. Like, no one's even close to what Tesla's doing on the road, not having to drive a car. I mean, you see features in cars coming out now, in the Audi Q8, you see them coming out in some of the new BMWs, but no car on the road compared to Tesla has those features. Not that they're fully allowed on the road yet, but the fully autonomous aspects that some Teslas have already out there that Audi and Mercedes hasn't fully put into their cars. Not to say that they don't have them yet, but they're not really fully putting the complete autonomous aspects on the market yet. And it's just weird to see Tesla is just kind of standing alone at that fully autonomous space on the market. So we'll see in the next coming years. I think you're going to start to see the Mercedes and the BMWs. They're going to start fully releasing those features to a point where they are competing with Tesla on that aspect. But I mean, they came out of really nowhere several years ago, and it's just they made the name for themselves really, really quick.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think those companies have the market. Like, they know who they're selling to, like the kind of people wise, and I think they're going to continue to do that because it's already making them enough money. Why would they stop? And also, Tesla is a little bit mainstream for electric cars. Like, when you think electric cars, that is exactly what you think of, especially where we are. But there are companies like Volkswagen right now, and because I did a high school presentation on electric cars like 2 or 3 years ago, that I was talking about the various brands and various types, and Tesla was one of them, but also Volkswagen has close to a fully autonomous system as well. And in some aspects, personally, I think it looks cooler than Tesla and stuff like that. It's called the K-Byte, and we just haven't heard anything about that because of whatever reason. But I think it's just because Tesla is mainstream and stuff like that.
You want to talk about a company that has a shady past? We can talk about Volkswagen. I mean, they are.
Volkswagen is weird. They sell sausages. Like, they
also lie about emissions, and it's like $1 billion.
I like how his first thought was to the sausages and not the emission fraud.
Not to the $1 million.
It's just emissions. No one cares about that stuff.
They paid a lot of money. They paid a lot of money to fix that.
Yeah. They kind of shot themselves in the foot.
They've really messed up big there. They were paying like to buy back cars for like $30,000 for cars that have been on the road for like a decade. It's hilarious how bad they messed up. Jacob?
Just one thing to add, and I know we were talking about autonomous vehicles, and I know you, Troy, I definitely agree with you that Tesla's on the forefront there. But I think, when it comes to level 3 autonomous like vehicles, which is the ability to drive from point A to point B if certain conditions are met on its own, I would say that there are definitely competitors like Audi and Mercedes that are at least there with them, if not surpassing them.
Yep.
Yeah, and to sort of build off that point, one of the reasons why I think Tesla's gotten so much of the attention in the electric car market is not just the fact that, they're the only, as far as I know, the only exclusive electric car company. It's also that they have, several different models of electric cars on the market. Whereas, like, for instance, I drive a Prius, which is a hybrid. Toyota and most other automakers have maybe 1 or 2 hybrid or fully electric models on their market, and that's it. So, it's not so much that these companies aren't getting involved. It's that they haven't really diversified. Like, we're not at the point where, and I think we'll get there soon, we're not at the point right now where you can get like an electric F-150 or an electric SUV.
Well, it's interesting because they're doing an electric Mustang line, which is kind of, I thought when I first saw it, I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. They're not discontinuing the Mustang, but they're making like a fully electric SUV Mustang. And I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. And that kind of leads me to my next point. This is why Tesla got so much relevance, and this is why if you bet against them, you're down $35 billion on 2020. When electric cars started, they weren't sexy. They weren't cool. They was like the Nissan Leaf. They were slow. They weren't cool. They were ugly. And then Tesla shows up and they're making performance cars that are fully electric. And these things are fast. Like that's what consumers who are looking to spend a lot of money on a cool car, they don't want to pay for a Nissan Leaf that's fully electric. That still costs a lot of money, but they're willing to drop $60,000 to $100,000 on a fully electric car that can go 0 to 60 in sub 3 seconds or 0 to 60 in sub 5 seconds.
The Roadster is going to be 1.9 seconds estimated.
It's incredible. I mean, you can buy an eight passenger car, the Model X, and you can go 0 to 60 in sub 4. Like if it's fully up, like that's what's doing it for Tesla. They are a cool electric car. They were the first company to make electric cars cool and more accessible to people. That's going to change soon. I think you're going to see Audi, you're going to see Mercedes, you're going to see, the luxury brands out there make their electric cars cool. But Tesla did a service to the world because they really pushed that. And if they didn't do that, I don't think we would see this yet. I think this would still take some time. And I think we wouldn't, the Nissan Leaf wasn't getting the job done. Chris, final thoughts on this?
Another thing to keep in mind is the market's going to move towards electric vehicles over, gas cars quicker than I think people realize. Not so much in the United States, but in a couple of European countries, they've actually banned selling gas cars altogether from like 2025. Like I think a couple of Northern European countries have done this. And I feel like as climate change gets worse and, electric cars become more attractive, you're going to see that sort of accelerate and spread to other countries. So I think that the market's going to change a lot quicker than people think.
The new one too is the Model Y that I know they released it a couple of years ago, but it's now becoming available. Oh man, it is a cool looking car. It really is. But away from the $35 billion that people have lost. Another interesting story, again from CNN Business. There is a lot of money missing over in the UK. Precisely $50 billion missing. And nobody has an explanation. So I'll kind of dive into this and we can, discuss this a little bit more. But a group of UK lawmakers said on Friday that there's as much as 50 billion euros, so this is 67.4 billion US dollars in cash was missing. It urged the Bank of England to investigate. This is a quote. The money is stashed somewhere, but the Bank of England doesn't know where. They don't know where it is or they don't know who took it. And they don't even seem very curious. And that's a direct quote coming from Meg Hillier. She's the chair of the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee, which they oversee the government finances in the UK. But there's $67 billion just floating around somewhere. No one knows where it is. And these people aren't that, pushing that urgently to find out where it is either. Seems a little irresponsible if you ask me. I don't know. Your guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I don't know if irresponsible, I don't know if I would say that's the right word just because of the nature of it. It's not really like the government has that much control in that sense. It's really just, they have a very large percentage of their currency that's not in their banking system. And I guess they said, of that, 20 to 25% would be, or of all their currency, 20 to 25% used in transactions, and then 5% would be, for savings. So there's a 70% number there, and that's really where they're like, well, people have all this money outside of our banking system, but we can't really tell where it is.
Chris, thoughts on this? It's a lot of money.
Well, I mean, where do you think Pav got the money to renovate the studio, Troy?
You could have done
Zeta doesn't pay for itself. and the exchange rates were so good, Pav was able to sneak a little extra money in through some classic arbitrage.
Chris,
it wasn't that hard.
If it was $50 billion, I hope he wouldn't book us to make us fly at 6 a.m. flights only. Let me just say that.
Same day to Pittsburgh. That's living the life on a Tuesday morning, nonetheless.
Out of Philadelphia airport, not even like the third closest airport. We had to go all the way to Philly.
Well, Troy, I wish we were going out of Philadelphia airport because Newark airport, like the traffic getting there was nuts. But I'm getting off topic.
The good news is when I came back from Florida, I had to go to the Newark airport anyway, and then drive all the way to the Philly airport because Philly canceled all of our flights. So I got to do both. Best of both worlds.
That's great, man. So getting back on topic, I really hope Pav isn't a Polar Media guy. I think that it's kind of interesting because and you know, I'm taking a macroeconomic class right now, so I'm kind of like immersed in this more than I probably should be. Like, people don't realize how much money these central banks and these treasuries really like handle. Like, I know in the United States, it's like trillions and trillions of dollars that we're talking about. So, you know, you see a headline, it's like 50 billion pounds or whatever the amount is unaccounted for. Like, that's like a rounding error compared to like the sheer amount of money that these institutions like deal with. So, like, I think it's more of like a public perception thing that, you know, people don't really understand like the full scope of just how much money these institutions have to deal with.
I mean, meanwhile, I'm over here, and if like McDonald's charges me twice and I pay $8 twice, I'm like, where the heck did that extra $8 go? And I have it down to the cent. But 50 billion.
Maybe you should work for the British government, Troy.
I know where that money exactly is. Seriously, can they just float like a little?
He's gonna go door to door.
Seriously, I'd knock on every British door over there and be like, "Hey, you see 50 billion lying around somewhere?" But let's, like, honestly, can they float a little money over my way? You know, pay for my education at Rutgers. I mean, let's try to float some of that. Like, it's got to be somewhere, right? Let's just. I mean, Jacob, you've done some auditing before in your career. Like you said, 50, like kind of what Chris said, 50 billion is smaller when you look at compared to trillions. But you know, they're talking about where the money could be. I just think it's kind of funny that really there's no urgency to find it. They're kind of just like, it'll show up. Like, they'll find it eventually. But I don't care how small it is compared to the trillions. When there's a B in that and it's a billion, it's billions of, you know, of dollars. I think there'd be some urgency there. Think about it, like, you talk about the costs of doing certain welfare programs. Like, 50 billion can do a big chunk. It can. Like, I know it's compared to trillions, but still.
Well, again, the idea is that the reason why they're not very worried is because to them it's not missing. It's just they don't know where it is, and it still theoretically in their mind, I'm sure, belongs to people. Like, it didn't just
could have been a big heist.
It's just like
could have been a big heist.
Well, and then it would have to be like a bank not reporting that they have lost all that cash.
Listen, 50 billion, just 50 billion is enough to go off the grid and just disappear.
I mean, yeah, and to Chris's point, I wanted to point out, I'm reading a stat here that, you know, all of their currency is only worth about 71 billion. So it is a pretty significant portion.
I'm surprised it's not more. Huh.
I think they've been scaling back. I know most countries have been, as, you know, more and more money gets, you know, passed electronically. So they don't need.
So you're talking about just hard cash.
Yeah, just hard cash.
Okay. All right, that makes sense, actually.
And in this case, Troy, like, I think the interesting thing is, like, you know, they didn't lose it. It's just like, it's not at a bank. It's not with a company. It's used by people, presumably for things that are made in straight cash transactions. And I think they mentioned that there are a couple of things where, you know, it could speak to, like, some of the poorer communities just like having cash, not having a bank account, and using cash for all their transactions. But it also speaks to some extent to, like, tax fraud and the capability for, you know, possibly people to divert their wealth just into cash and not report it when it comes to taxes.
Let me pose this to you guys. You know what happened the last time a country in the UK, you know, didn't keep a close enough eye and they let something get out of hand over there? You know what happened? The United States of America was born. They didn't keep a close enough eye. They weren't keeping track of things. And something really big happened to them and bit them in the butt. Worked out for us, but bit them in the butt. They need to be more watchful of things. I don't know. Like, this money's just sitting around somewhere. I know they don't think it's missing, but when you don't know where it is, it could be missing. I don't know. This just shows how much money there is in the world, though. The 50 billion isn't a big deal. And I'm just over here with, like, you know, like I said, I'm watching why McDonald's charged me twice on a transaction, and they're just fine with 50 billion gone. But any final thoughts on this, guys?
I would just say just one thing to clarify there. I mean, I think the focus here is not on money, it's on cash. Like, the important thing to think about is this is just the cash they have. This is not like the value of, you know, the euro or the pound. Like, this doesn't have anything to really do with that. And in your case, right, Troy, you're talking about, McDonald's, like that would be a transaction on your credit card. So there would be no real like cash consideration there.
I'm
So let's say just
missing a $5 bill in my wallet because I bought McDonald's.
Yeah. So that would be like, that's the thing. And it's obviously not very easy to track cash. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, governments aren't the hugest enemies towards this move away from cash, because it is very difficult for them to track as compared to, mobile banking and internet banking, which is highly popular now and also highly auditable.
Yeah. Well, sliding over, we got a little bit of a more positive story. There was a bar in Toronto, actually. They were struggling financially, and to stay in business, their customers bought all of the beer this bar had in stock to keep the business going. This one, again, coming from CNN Travel this time. A Toronto bar owner says her business will survive the coronavirus pandemic thanks to the loyal customers who bought up her entire beer stock, giving her a desperately needed cash boost. So they pretty much bought her entire inventory. That's pretty crazy. It's Abra Shiner. That's the name of the woman who runs the bar. She opened the bar Swan Dive 5 years ago in Brockton Village, the neighborhood of Toronto. After COVID-19 restrictions forced her to shut the doors, Shiner decided to ask her community for help via Facebook. It sounds like they really stepped up in a big way, and they bought the entire inventory. So it's a lot of beer. Richie?
I would just like to start this. I know you guys can't see this, but this is an article from CNN, right?
Yeah.
And the picture they chose is just like what looks like a closet of like a couple cases of beer when like, why is it not the restaurant or the bar? Or I don't know. It's just so strange to me that it's like this. But yeah, it really is a great story. And I think it's so great that there are still people that are willing to just come and do that. I mean, it's not like they're buying like, metal pins or something. Like clearly they're going to drink the beer unless it's like all gross IPAs or something like that.
It's all craft beer, so I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe she should learn from this and not
buy more Bud Light.
Buy more Bud Light and some freaking BLLs for.
By the way, she said they sold around 90 cases of beer. A cases it runs around
$18 to like.
No, that's a pack of beer.
Oh, what's a case?
A case, I think it can be closer to like the $50 mark for a
How many
case.
beers is in a case?
Anyone
Case
know?
is 24.
Yeah. So if craft beer, this isn't Bud Light. This isn't
PBR.
No, this isn't PBR. 99 cents.
Well,
a
they
can.
should be selling PBR. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Well, in this case, it worked out really well because she had $50 cases of beer. I'm just generalizing. I looked up what's the average price of a case of craft beer. It came out to like $48. She sold 90 of those. A lot of the times these businesses might go out of business because they have a large inventory and they can't liquefy. But in this case, her customers all bought. She was able to liquidate her assets and stay afloat for a little bit extra time. If it turns out those were all worth about $50, it comes out to a nice sum number of like $4,500, $4,500, somewhere in that ballpark. It's a helpful amount, especially with what's going on right now. So a great story. Jacob, Chris.
Yeah, I think that, it's a really good gesture, especially as you mentioned, Troy, like you can't really go to a bar or a restaurant right now, at least indoors, without like putting yourself in risk of like getting sick. So that's really keeping a ton of people away. So I think that it's really good that, people are stepping up voluntarily buying their inventory just so they can, help that business survive. Because there are a lot of these businesses that aren't as lucky and they're going to go under. So,
yeah, I agree, Chris. Just, one thing to add here. Just a quick Google search will tell you that Canada is one of the best spots for craft beer. And obviously they have I'm guessing a large craft beer scene in the area. But I think just the economies of craft beer can be very different. Obviously, I think a lot of craft beers, especially in the U.S., come from very small breweries. And very small breweries, I think, have been hit harder by some of these COVID restrictions. It's probably more difficult for them to, get back to business, to brewing, to having employees in the shop, and to putting out, distributing rather their beers. So I can see why, some of the craft breweries would be struggling, and definitely, of course, that would lead to some of the distributors and liquor stores to be struggling as well. And yeah, I agree. It's definitely a heartwarming story to hear how Canadians love their beer and their local small businesses.
Well, I mean, and there's numbers projecting around like 75 to 85% of all independent restaurants are going to go out, and that includes bars, will go out of business in 2020 possibly. And this is like one of the few ways these places are surviving. And unfortunately, a lot of these places don't have that success story of, their clientele stepping up and, being their saving grace. So like the good thing for some of these craft breweries, at least they can sell their beer still, like they can sell cases, people can come in and do that. But a lot of these bars were closed indefinitely for a long time. You can't have people in at all. So like these local bars are just taking a beating right now. A lot of these places, this is in Toronto. It's not exactly a warm place. You're not going to be seeing a lot of outdoor dining anymore this time of year. It's tough because a lot of these places, I don't know the specific guidelines in Canada, but I mean, you can look at the United States. Indoor dining is being cut back, severely, and it's tough. So it's great to see this story of a lot of people buying beer and saving a local restaurant. And to wrap it up on that, guys, your favorite, I'm not going to do a craft beer, but your favorite beers, anything? Jacob, I know you like your craft beers, so if you want to kind of pick your top one.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
It doesn't have to be craft. It can be normal too. What's your go-to drink?
I don't know. I'd say, I'm definitely a fan of some of the larger ones. Like I like a Heineken or
that's
Corona,
fine.
Something along those lines. But
Heineken?
Yeah, it's tough. Let me toss over to Chris. Let me think for a second.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
I would say it's like a 2-way tie between Corona and Stella.
That's kind of
You're a very distinguished fellow, Chris.
Classy.
With the Stella, very, very classy.
I thought you were going to say Natty Light.
No, not a Natty Light guy.
Richie?
Though I'm not legally able to drink alcohol and I never have.
What's your favorite design? What's the bottle?
My favorite design is definitely the PBR cans.
Cool can.
They have
really
cool
bad.
They actually
beer,
do.
But...
They have really cool art on them. Like one has like an alien on it and stuff like that. And also $18 for 30 of them.
So you've heard.
I've heard that. I mean, I feel like once I'm in the position to buy that, that's going to be it.
You'll have to see because I'm
going to save so much money.
I don't think you're going to like the taste. It's pretty crappy, but you might like the taste. Who knows? I think I'm going to
update mine. Oh, sorry, Legs.
No, you go first. You go first.
I'm gonna change my answer. I like the Carlsberg Elephant. It's a pretty good one. I guess it has a lot more traction internationally than in the U.S.
So that's one of those like made up beers, right? That's like not real, and you just
no.
words in your head.
I promise you, they're like the third most selling brand of beer, but just they haven't cracked the American market yet, I guess.
So how do you get them?
So that's why
import your beers in cases.
It's hard to find them in the store. But I know Troy's a Michelob Ultra guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Michelob Ultra. I'll go the safe route. I mean, it's not the Bud Light, it's not the Coors Light. I'm gonna change it a little bit. I don't want to be that. And to be honest, those two are much worse than Michelob, if you ask me. So if you want to get a sponsorship, if you're listening, Anheuser-Busch, and you're looking to do a sponsorship with
please sponsor us,
Michelob Ultra, we'd love to be sponsors. So yeah, I like the gold version you guys have too, and the prickly pear. So I'd be happy to be a sponsor. But Michelob Ultra got to be my pick. I feel lame for saying that as we talk about craft beers, but so be it. Moving over, we've got one more story for you guys. I thought this was a kind of cool one. Chris, I know you love planes. I know you were like a plane nerd as a kid.
I'm a huge plane guy. Always have been, always will be.
You thought 787s were cooler than starfighters from Star Wars. You thought,
and I stand by it.
You thought you were that kid who thought, oh, I want a plane. I don't want
big flight sim guy.
Lego set. I don't want a starfighter Star Wars Lego set.
All right.
So with that in mind, Chris, this one's right up your alley. There's again CNN Travel on this one. Airline bids farewell to its jumbo jets by inviting fans for a business class lunch. This report says, as the pandemic has continued to savage the aviation industry, airlines worldwide have rushed to speed up the retirement programs of their aging Boeing 747 jumbo jets. But while flyers might not be likely to get airborne with the queen of the skies again, one airline is giving her a proper send-off by allowing fans to come and spend the day on her before she's taken out of action. So these companies, they're allowing people to come eat lunches and hang out on the planes, kind of throwing a little of a party and having a fancy onboard meal. So participants will have champagne on the coveted upper deck. They can take selfies with the plane engines and tour the aircraft, including the sleeping areas for the crew, the cargo hold, and the flight deck. So you get a full tour of the 787. Chris, this sounds like a 6-year-old you's dream.
Yeah, they said it in the article, and I think that this really sums it up, the ultimate 747 experience. I mean, first of all, for any airplane nerd, like the 747 is like one of the most influential planes out there. Like it was the first really like jumbo jet that was able to like fly around the world, and it's been around for like 50 years. So most aviation nerds are all over the 747, and I think it's really cool that they're giving them this experience. Now, in your sort of list of topics to talk about, you just said something about airline food. And, airline food in general has a negative connotation. I don't like airplanes for the food, but this seems to be like a legit like meal. Like this is not like just the flight attendant throwing a bag of chips at you on your flight. So this seems like a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think it's the real deal. Have anyone here been on a 747 ever? No one? No one's flown? I know, Jacob, you've been overseas a couple times. You never got to go on one?
Not on a 747.
The upper deck, I'm looking at pictures of these now. They're really cool, and they look spectacular. Like if you got to fly on a 16-hour flight, or you're flying like Australia for like a 20-hour flight, like this is how you want to fly. With that said, I don't know how delusional you could be as a kid to think these things are cooler than starfighters from Star Wars and stuff and X-Wings, but I mean, you can be unique. You can like these planes more. They're pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know how they fly. They seem kind of big for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the power of their engines, but if you want to go and crap all over my childhood hobbies, that's fine. That's fine. I want to come on this podcast. I want to talk about the stories of the week, but if you want to shit all over me, that's fine.
Chris, who would
what's cooler, a Death Star or a 747?
Who would win in a fight?
747 all day.
A 747 or yes. a TIE fighter?
What would win in a fight?
What would win in a fight? Well, yeah. I see the 747 could suck any human being in its engines in about half a second, so I'm going to go with the jumbo jet here.
But
a TIE fighter is shooting lasers, and that can go in and out of the orbit.
I don't think so. I'm not buying it.
Doesn't even have laser guns.
It doesn't.
Like, what
the
are you going to do?
747 doesn't have light speed.
It's got the advantage size.
I don't know.
That is true. No, it is bigger.
They make some big
TIE fighters. Yeah, that makes sense.
Settle. I will say this much, Chris. And when I first read the title, I was like, they're inviting fans of the airplane for the lunch. I was like, are there fans? Are there fans out there? Is this going to work? So to hear that we have one of the airplane fans of the world with us on this podcast, I just feel blessed.
There are dozens of us, Jacob.
Chris, I'm not gonna I know that you guys exist out there. Like, you weren't the first airplane fan I met. I just never really understood it. I mean, they are crazy cool, don't get me wrong. I guess I never saw it that way as a kid. They're really cool, but I think it's the same kind of like, some kids really like horses, some kids really like planes, I guess, right? And then the rest of us like the normal things like Star Wars and like Nerf guns. But that's just, that's just other kids.
Yeah, I mean, I've never given any inclination in the 2.5 years that I've known you, Troy, that I'm a normal human being. So I guess we could just disperse with that right now.
Is that why you like the Jets? Is that why the football team you follow is the Jets?
No. I like airplanes because I'm a weirdo. I like the Jets because I'm a masochist. Two very different things.
Well, there probably wasn't nearly as many airplanes as there is now when you were a kid either, so you probably had a much smaller selection.
What? Chris, I take it back because Richie's right. When you were a kid, airplanes were so cool. Like, When you were born, you couldn't fly.
Relying on a little glider.
Like, flying wasn't a thing yet, except for birds. And then when you grew up a little bit, you know, the Wright brothers came out and they were taking flight with these mechanisms they put out in the skies.
Did you get to meet them, Chris?
I understand.
No, I did not. I wasn't old enough at the time. My dad wouldn't let me go, but
Will this be the last time Chris comes on the show?
You should put a poll up.
I'll put on the poll right now. Go vote, everyone who's listening.
Yeah, you could just swap me out for Stugatz. It's fine.
He's the Stugatz.
So Chris, I think it's cool. 747, I can see the hype. It is like, it's giant and it flies. It's kind of like, how do those giant boats float? But I guess we know how those float a little bit easier. That makes more sense to me than of this giant flying thing in the air, but it's pretty cool. You know, I think of all the stories we talked about today, 747 lunches, not the coolest of the stories, but you know, if you're a plane fan, go get your tickets, get on there. This is a once in a lifetime experience. So Chris, you better be buying that ticket, because if you're a real fan, the 747 gang is all hanging out together. You better be there. But any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up?
I would just like to say, recently, I think within the week, I didn't know, because I've only flown a couple times, probably like 5 or 6 times. You know, there's little Stroop waffles they give you sometimes on the plane, those like caramel waffles.
Very good.
Yeah.
I loved those, and I was always so excited to fly and get my Stroop waffle. And I guess I never thought about it, but I saw it in a Target, and I was like, I can just buy these in the store. Like, this is amazing. And I was with a person we've had on the show before, Austin DiSavino, and he was like, this is a thing. Like, people just eat these to buy as like a snack. And I was like, oh, I always considered this like airplane food.
You ever have peanuts off the plane?
No, I haven't actually.
They sell those too.
Really?
And they sell Sprite and ginger ale.
Do they sell Coke?
Yeah, they sell Coke. Coffee too.
Well, coffee I knew. I've had that a couple times. I never really considered that special, but the Stroop waffles.
How about that airplane food though? But you know, I think that's going to do it for us here on Can We Just Talk. Thank you for listening. We'll have another episode coming out next week, dropping on.
Whoa.
What?
I thought we were going to talk about the Cheesecake Factory, bro.
No, we're
Don't
cutting
fight
the
with me at Cheesecake.
cutting
You know
at
I love to
Cheesecake
go
Factory.
there.
Do you want the wrap on the Cheesecake Factory?
I just wanted to get that Drake quote in there.
Listen, there was a big lawsuit. Cheesecake Factory's paying like $100,000 or something. So it's not even that big if you ask the UK, who's floating 50 billion around somewhere. It's only 100,000. What's 100,000?
Give us the quote though. Give us the quote anyway.
Do you want the quote, Jacob? So
You
go
already
ahead.
got it.
What? I didn't hear you say it.
I said, don't fight with me at Cheesecake. You know I love to go there.
So yes, Cheesecake Factory, they're paying a big lawsuit because of COVID closings, and some people with shareholders were misled. I didn't even know Cheesecake Factory had stocks, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. So I think now we can conclude. Now that Jacob got his quote out there.
Now I'm okay. You can close it up, Troy.
All right, good. Again, this was Can We Just Talk, part of the Polar Media family. Make sure to check out the other shows. We got Polar Music out there, Deep Fried Medicine, 2 new episodes coming out this week soon. Again, Can We Just Talk? Again, this was Troy DiSavino, Richie Welbrock, Jacob Berg, Chris Sakonis. Thank you for listening. Make sure to stay tuned. We got more content coming your way. Thanks again.